When is the Dragon Prince at its best? I would wager that it's not when the show is merely depicting fantastical battles or moments of brave heroism and daring do. Those are good, in fact, and they are part of what make the show as strong as it is, but a lot of fantasy shows can deliver action and deliver heroism. What the Dragon Prince does well is depict eloquently and thoughtfully how people react when their preconceived ideas and prejudices are undermined by experience, are undermined by strange sensations and impressions that render their preconceived nexus of beliefs, values, perspectives, worldviews fundamentally insufficient. It is, as Schopenhauer always talks about, a moment when all of our reasoning, all of our judgment is fundamentally inadequate and insufficient to deal with the energy, the vitality, the wildness of the world that always tends to overwhelm and overflow what we had previously believed. When I say prejudices, I don't just mean prejudices in the narrow sense that we often use that word to refer to, say, bigotry. Certainly, there is quite a bit of that in the show that characters on all sides have to try to combat and overcome to see each other in the situation that they are all interwoven into with, as Princess Mononoke puts it, eyes unclouded by hate. But prejudices can also be much smaller than that. They can be these little ideas of who we are and what we want for ourselves that we accept. We don't even really know where they came from. We don't even know the combination of interactions between ourselves and our social environment and our upbringing that resulted in us having these beliefs, because we view them as just being a part of ourselves as much as we have eyes and arms and hands and feet. But ultimately, they can be undermined by what we actually go through, what we endure. And the Dragon Prince is very good at showcasing this. Rayla is the best case in terms of how she has a very set and very rigid idea of who she is, who she believes she should be, that ultimately she cannot square with her actual impulses that she finds herself having. So she changes. Ultimately, I want to see Callum go through more introspection. I want to see him go through more testing, more serious challenging of his beliefs. As John Stuart Mill, the great English philosopher, so thoughtfully talks about, the challenging of preconceived beliefs leads to one of two options. Either A, the belief is reformed or adjusted, perhaps not completely overturned, certainly not all at once, but changed a little bit. Or number two, the belief is reaffirmed, but the experience of having that belief challenged causes us to reflect on why we actually held it in the first place, what value it has. Beliefs that aren't challenged and aren't asked to be justified ultimately become calcified into dogma. They become calcified into mere mechanical repetition of platitudes, and ultimately that disconnects us from each other and our actual experience of life, which is not platitudinous or dogmatic. This testing of beliefs is especially important in narrative storytelling. The novel as an art form really brought this into being, but It also applies to TV, film, video games, whatever. It is fundamentally a crucial part of modern storytelling. What do I mean by modern, you might ask? Well, in, say, old historical epic, your Iliad, your Odyssey, your Aeneid, whatever, most cultures have their version of this. The character is at peace with their world. That does not mean they are at peace with everyone in that world, but the world is solid, it's continuous, it's a fundamentally stable place that has a link to the past, a link to a certain set of communities and ideas and values, and individuals are ultimately tied to that world. The novel changes this in that individuals become detached from that world. They become removed from it. Not just in the sense of, oh, hey, I don't agree with the people around me, but my value system is fundamentally different from the value system I see in the world. Or even, the world I am in does not have a clear value system. I am uprooted and deracinated from any clear and concise sense of morals and values, and I do not know what to do. I do not know who to be. The novelistic hero thus has to travel around and go to different places, different social situations, different milieus, and not necessarily copy any of them, but test the hero's own beliefs and own convictions and own preconceived notions against the impressions depicted in this new environment. And thus the hero becomes changed and they steadily grow. Dickens is probably the master of this, but it's evident in a lot of different kinds of novelistic storytelling, from your George Eliot to your Tolstoy to your more modern people, Virginia Woolf, Toni Morrison, Zadie Smith. This is just a fundamental principle of good novelistic storytelling. Good modern long-form storytelling as a whole. You see the same thing in anything from Better Call Saul, Breaking Bad, to even Avatar. Aang knows his role. He knows that he needs to try to save the world. But what does that actually mean? Who does he actually want to be? What is the significance of that role to him? He goes around and he sees what other people think of the Avatar. And a lot of the perceptions that he encounters are contrasting against what he previously believed. And he has to either incorporate the beliefs he sees or rebut them and thus strengthen his own beliefs. And as such, in this process, he grows. But he ultimately needs to make choices. Choices matter. And for a choice to be real, for it to be substantial, there needs to be some risk to it. There needs to be some semblance of anxiety and unease. There needs to be a real, genuine, earnest threat of the character making the wrong choice, or perhaps not making a choice at all. For examples of this that you might be aware of, think of even Harry Potter or Frodo from The Lord of the Rings. Both of them are examples of characters who are as close to your clear-cut hero as you can get, and yet they are still characters who face significant challenges. They are still characters that face a lot of difficulties and a lot of obstacles. Not just practical obstacles, as in Sauron or Voldemort is trying to stop me from accomplishing my heroic mission, but more interestingly, internal and psychological obstacles that challenge who they thought they were, the beliefs they once held. Harry Potter suffers quite a lot in Book 5, for instance. The Order of the Phoenix, wherein he finds his childish idealism fundamentally extinguished in the aftermath of Cedric's death. Cedric wasn't protected. Voldemort has come back. No one believes Harry about Voldemort. No one is going to help him. No one is seriously going to even help him try to confront his feelings about Cedric's death, and so he is fundamentally lost. There is a perhaps deeper sense of questioning in Book 7, The Deathly Hallows, Part 1 and 2, but especially in what the movies designate as Part 1. I know a lot of people make fun of that movie as just being about camping in the woods, but honestly, I love that movie all the way through. It's probably my favorite Harry Potter movie. It is a movie that fundamentally departs from the routine of the previous 6 books, which are all about a year at Hogwarts. And that's brilliant because that is fundamentally what the book is about, and what the movie, Part 1, is about. It's about not really having a clear idea of what you should do, not having a clear sense of directions. Instead of childhood or adolescence, you're thrown right into adulthood. You're thrown into a world where there are not clear, direct, concise answers for who you really should try to be. And Harry and crew have to try to figure that out. Frodo faces a more dramatic and more operatic version of the same doubts and anxieties. He approaches Mount Doom, and ultimately he loses. He is overpowered by the curse of the ring, which is not just, spooky magic curse, but ultimately preys on someone's desire. It preys on someone's desperate yearnings, and it gets stronger and stronger as one approaches Mount Doom. Frodo is as pure-hearted as anyone, and yet even he cannot ultimately throw the ring in the fire. And in the book especially, he only wins because of lucky chance. These are characters whose perceptions about themselves are fundamentally undermined, and they are defined as characters through this challenge, through this agon, as the Greeks called it, through this fundamental trying and testing of what they had previously believed. Has Callum really gone through this yet? I don't really think so. Certainly not to the extent of Viren or Rayla. We have a little test of him being tempted with dark magic, but he very quickly comes to the conclusion that dark magic is bad and he shouldn't use it, and he is very sorry. And sure, that's fine for dark magic. I don't need him to be tempted by dark magic. I need him to be tempted, though, by Aaravos. Not just by Aaravos because Aaravos is charismatic and charming, but because Aaravos ultimately appeals to some part of Callum that Callum is perhaps not even aware exists in him, some desperate yearning, this desperate desire to try to fulfill his ambitions, whatever the cost. Such a conflict would fundamentally change our idea of Callum. It would make Season 5 and the upcoming seasons much more interesting and thoughtful to think about. And I really hope that this season goes in that direction. I really hope that the future of the show goes in this direction. Even if Callum's basic goodness is affirmed, it will be stronger because it is tested. As narrative proves. Narrative proves that virtue, commitment, self-identity are ultimately only valuable insofar as they are actively tested by the challenges of a complicated and murky world. So thank you all for watching. If you liked what you saw today, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Donate to my Patreon if you can, and you want to see more videos like this before anyone else. Keep watching The Dragon Prince. I love the show. I hope Season 5 is excellent, and I am hopeful that it will be. So, delight in the show. We're very lucky to have it. Anyway, tune in soon for our next analysis. It will be coming soon. That I promise you. Thank you all again. Adios, comrades.